At its core, this is a story about poetic justice, hidden identity, and power reversal. It explores the prejudice and mistreatment Black women often face in systems of authority and how strength, intelligence, and preparation can turn the tables. This story confronts racism, systemic abuse, and the assumptions people make based on appearances. The narrative centers around a Black woman who is intentionally placed in a jail setting to observe misconduct as part of a deep internal investigation. But no one knows that this woman is actually the newly appointed chief of internal affairs for the department. The white officers, steeped in prejudice and arrogance, mock and belittle her, unaware of the storm about to descend. The genre of the story is drama with elements of suspense and social justice. It's rooted in real-world injustices but elevated through a gripping narrative that emphasizes tension, personal strength, and ultimate triumph. The dominant emotion throughout the story will be righteous anger, steadily building into empowerment and vindication. Viewers will feel the sting of injustice, the tension of the undercover setup, and the sweet, intense satisfaction of the final reveal. There's also an underlying sense of hope, that change is possible when truth is exposed and when underestimated people rise above. This story is meant to make audiences think deeply about how racism and bias operate in even the most secure institutions, and what happens when the people they dismiss are actually holding all the cards. The cell door slammed shut with a metallic clang that echoed like a gunshot. Laughter followed. Cruel. Sharp. Mocking. "Welcome to hell, sweetheart," said Officer Ray Murphy, grinning through yellowed teeth as he tapped the bars with his baton like he was playing a game. The woman inside, calm, poised, silent, didn't flinch. "You deaf or just slow?" Officer Travis barked, tossing a stained blanket at her feet. "You'll learn real quick. Around here, you don't speak unless spoken to." They both chuckled. Low, ugly. The kind of laugh that said this wasn't the first time they'd enjoyed humiliating someone, especially someone like her. She stood still. No tears, no anger, just silence. Her eyes scanned every inch of the holding cell, the ceiling, the rust in the corners, the chipped paint, the cameras that were either fake or unplugged. She was taking mental notes, but they didn't notice. They weren't looking at her as a person, just another Black woman behind bars, another body to boss around, another target for their sarcasm and abuse. Ray leaned in closer. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" He sneered, eyes narrowing. "Or maybe you thought that pretty face was going to get you special treatment?" Still no response. She sat down on the bench, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and stared straight ahead. "Got herself arrested for stealing. Bet you that ain't even her real hair," Travis muttered, watching her like a hawk. "These people always think the world owes them something." Ray snorted. "She's about to find out it don't." The lights flickered. One bulb buzzed violently and went out. The air in the holding cell felt colder now. But it wasn't the electricity. It was something else. The woman's silence had weight to it. Like she wasn't scared. Like she knew something they didn't. Travis threw her paperwork on the desk and yawned. "They said her name is Maya Johnson or something. No priors. No ID. Just picked up near the protest downtown." Ray leaned back in his chair, feet on the desk. "Whatever. Let her sit in there. Maybe a night behind bars will teach her some respect." He didn't see the flicker in Maya's eyes, but the camera did. One of the real ones, the only one they forgot to disable. It zoomed in, silently tracking her every move. And the man watching from the secure feed in DC took notes of his own. Ray opened a soda, cracked a joke, and mocked her again through the bars. "You want to tell us why you really out there protesting, sweetheart? You think you're changing the world?" Maya finally looked up. One glance. Sharp as glass. Unapologetically powerful. Ray blinked. For a moment, just 1 second, he felt like he was the one behind the bars. Then she spoke. Just 5 words. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. "You'll remember me very soon." The laughter stopped. The air thickened. Ray and Travis exchanged a confused look. And somewhere down the hallway, a door clicked open. Maya Johnson wasn't always the kind of woman who walked silently into a cage without fear. She had been forged by fire. Born in the sweltering heart of Houston, raised in the forgotten corners of the South where sirens were lullabies and injustice was the air you breathed. Her mother died young. Her father, a preacher with a backbone of steel and a voice that could shake pews, raised her on verses and revolution. She learned early, The system was not built for her. But that didn't mean she couldn't master it. At 34, Maya had achieved what most people wouldn't even dare to dream. Harvard Law. Special Forces training under a civilian contractor. Recruited into the Department of Justice before she was 30. And then, after a groundbreaking report she authored on systemic abuse in Southern detention facilities, she was appointed Director of Internal Oversight and Investigations. One of the youngest, most powerful black women ever to hold the position. And now, she was undercover, in a borrowed identity, under a silent directive, with only 2 people in the entire country knowing who she really was. Her mission, to expose the corruption festering inside the Belwick County Sheriff's Office. Reports of racial profiling, abuse of power, and falsified records had been piling up for years, but every audit mysteriously came back clean. Someone was scrubbing the files. Someone was covering for the men in blue. So Maya made a decision. No more satellite reports. No more distant briefings. She would see it for herself, from the inside. But even before the cell door slammed, Maya knew what kind of place this was. She felt at the moment she was randomly selected at the protest. The condescending tone. The way the cuffs were applied tighter than necessary. The smugness on the booking officer's face. They thought she was weak. They thought she was prey. And in a way, that's exactly what she wanted. Because predators reveal themselves when they believe no one's watching. Now, seated on the hard bench, the chill of the concrete wall behind her spine, she felt utterly still. Not afraid. Not angry. Just focused. She remembered something her father used to say when the world seemed impossible. The deeper they bury you, the more power you'll rise with. She knew this would be the hardest case of her career, not because of the danger, but because of the restraint it required. To sit still while they mocked her. To remain quiet while they demeaned her. To endure. But she wasn't here for revenge. She was here for the truth. Still, Maya was human. And sometimes, at night, even her breath caught in her throat. She'd trained herself to compartmentalize, to lock fear in a mental box and shove it into a corner. But in moments of stillness, like now, her mind wandered. Not to weakness, but to duty. To every young black woman who'd been unjustly detained. To every broken family who'd been silenced by systemic violence. To every name that lived only in hashtags and hollow apologies. She didn't need their respect. She needed their lies exposed. As Ray and Travis continued their shift, oblivious to the quiet storm in Cell 4, Maya replayed their words in her mind. Each insult, each smirk, each subtle violation. Every detail was a breadcrumb she'd follow straight to the truth. She knew exactly how much power these men thought they had, and she knew how quickly that illusion would shatter. Outside, rain began to patter against the jailhouse roof. Inside, Maya blinked once slowly. And in that moment, every beat of her heart said the same thing. They have no idea who I am. The storm had escalated outside, heavy rain hammering the roof like warning drums. But inside the Belwick County Jail, the only thing rising was the stench of stale authority and unchecked power. It started like a joke. Ray Jenkins and Travis Holt, the 2 officers who had booked Maya, swaggered into the holding cell area with the cocky ease of men who believed their uniforms made them untouchable. Travis had a half-eaten candy bar in his hand. Ray was sipping bad coffee and laughing at a meme on his cracked phone screen. Then he saw her. Maya was sitting exactly where they'd left her, silent, still, eyes half closed. Something about that bothered Ray. Maybe it was the calm. Maybe it was the absence of fear. He wasn't used to that from women like her. "Hey," he said, tapping the bars with his flashlight. "You still awake, Queen?" Maya opened her eyes, but said nothing. "See that?" Travis smirked. "That look right there. That's the I think I'm better than you look." Ray sneered. "Not anymore. You're in our house now." Travis leaned closer to the bars. "You people always talk a big game in the streets. But in here, you're just another number." He tossed the wrapper at her feet. "Pick that up." Maya didn't move. "I said pick it up." She slowly tilted her head. Her voice was low, controlled. "No." Ray's smile disappeared. "What did you say?" "I said no." He took a step forward, gripping the bars. "You better learn some manners, inmate." Maya stood now, her posture straight, her presence unnerving. Even without the authority of a badge or the power of her title, she exuded control. Her eyes locked onto his, calm, calculating, unafraid. Ray didn't like that. He pulled out his keys, opened the cell door with a loud clang, and stepped inside. Travis followed. "You think you're tough?" Ray hissed. "Let's see how tough you are after a little." "Hey," a voice barked from the hallway. All three turned. It was Officer Lynn Beckett, a young, nervous woman with tired eyes and a clipboard in her hands. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked sharply, glaring at her fellow officers. Ray straightened. "Just making sure our guest understands the rules." "She's not even booked yet," Beckett said, walking toward them. "This isn't protocol. Get out of the cell." Travis rolled his eyes. "Relax. She's not going to file a complaint. She's nobody." Maya smiled slightly. That was the moment she knew the system here was rotting from the inside out. Travis had just confirmed everything her reports had suspected: intimidation, casual abuse, and the illusion of control built on fear. Beckett was still talking. "There's a federal audit scheduled next week. We've already had 3 anonymous complaints this month. You want to be the reason we get shut down." Ray muttered something under his breath and exited the cell, pushing past Beckett. Travis followed, glaring at Maya one last time. As soon as the door slammed shut, Maya sat back down, breathing deep. Not from fear, but strategy. This wasn't about reacting. It was about collecting data. Every move, every insult, every abuse of power would be documented. Her hidden body cam, buried discreetly in the seam of her jeans, was already recording. But that wasn't the inciting incident. That came 2 hours later. It was just past midnight when Officer Beckett returned, this time holding a sealed manila envelope. She looked shaken. "You have a visitor," she said. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Beckett didn't answer, just unlocked the door and escorted her silently down the dim hallway. They passed the drunk tank, the processing desk, and a wall of photos showing former sheriffs, every one of them white, grinning under antlers and flags. They turned left into a small interview room. Inside sat a tall man in a gray suit, bald with steel-rimmed glasses and a scar across his temple, Deputy Director Calvin Shaw, Maya's second-in-command at the Department of Justice. He stood as she entered, his face unreadable. Beckett closed the door behind them. Shaw slid the manila envelope toward Maya. "There's been a change." Maya frowned. "Change?" "The governor just signed off. You're no longer here as a covert auditor." He leaned in. "You've been appointed interim director of Belwick County Sheriff's Office effective immediately. Full authority. Full clearance." Maya blinked. "Effective when?" 30 minutes ago." She exhaled slowly. Shaw smirked. "Welcome to your new kingdom." Maya stared at the envelope, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the thunderous shift that had just occurred. She was no longer operating in shadows. She was now in charge. But she couldn't reveal it. Not yet. Why the rush? Shaw's face turned grim. Because 2 officers, Jenkins and Holt, were named in an official complaint filed by the governor's niece. She was detained here last week. Said she was harassed and groped. The story's about to go public. You need to act fast. Maya nodded. This was the moment. The curtain was about to lift. She wasn't just a witness now. She was the storm. And the 2 men who mocked her? They had no idea that tomorrow morning, she'd walk through those steel doors not as a number, but as their boss. Ray and Travis would soon learn a lesson they'd never forget. One taught not in handcuffs, but from behind the desk of the most powerful woman they'd ever disrespected. The next morning arrived not with sunshine, but with gray clouds blanketing the sky like a shroud. Belwick County Jail, a crumbling fortress of brick and steel, seemed unaware that its fate was about to shift forever. Officer Ray Jenkins was already at his post, feet kicked up on the front desk, scrolling through a gun catalog on his phone. Travis Holt sipped coffee nearby, cracking crude jokes about inmates and half laughing at a meme on the whiteboard that mocked a recent diversity training. Neither of them noticed the black SUV that pulled into the parking lot. Nor did they notice the woman who stepped out, dressed sharply in a fitted navy blue suit, heels clicking like thunder on the concrete, her natural curls pinned back in a sleek bun. Maya Monroe walked up the steps with calm purpose, her badge and the governor's directive in her briefcase, and years of battle-hardened experience in her eyes. The lobby fell silent when she entered. The receptionist blinked. "Can I help?" "I'm here to speak with the staff," Maya said crisply. "Where's the warden?" Warden Kravitz is off-site today," the receptionist replied. "Something about a hunting trip." "Of course," Maya muttered, then offered a tight smile. "That's fine. I'll address the department myself." Please gather all active staff in the main conference room in 15 minutes. The receptionist hesitated. And you are? Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She opened it to reveal the executive order stamped with the seal of the governor's office and the DOJ. The receptionist's jaw dropped. Ray and Travis looked up from their seats. Travis squinted. Is that? Ray stood slowly. No. No way. It was. The woman they'd mocked, insulted, and tried to intimidate was now holding the highest authority in the building. Good morning, Maya said to them both as she passed. Please join the others in the conference room. This won't take long. Ray's face turned red. Travis clenched his jaw. But they couldn't speak. Not here, not now. 15 minutes later, every uniformed officer and administrator stood in the stuffy, windowless room that had previously been used to play reruns of security training tapes no one watched. The air was thick with confusion. Maya stood at the front, hands clasped, silent for a moment. She let their eyes absorb her presence. The same woman they'd dismissed just hours ago, now standing taller, with unshakable command. Good morning, she began. My name is Maya Monroe. As of 12:01 a.m. today, I have been appointed interim director of Belwick County Sheriff's Office. This facility now falls under my direct control. Gasps murmured through the room. Travis shifted uncomfortably. Ray crossed his arms, face stiff. I know this comes as a surprise, Maya continued. For some, it may be unpleasant. She paced slowly. I came here undercover to observe. And what I observed was more than negligence. It was a culture of fear, silence, and unchecked authority. That changes today. A low cough echoed in the room, but no one interrupted. Maya stopped walking. Effective immediately, the DOJ is launching a full internal audit. Officers will be interviewed, shift patterns reviewed, and complaints cross-referenced. If you've done your job with integrity, you have nothing to worry about. But if you've allowed your badge to shield cruelty, bias, or corruption, I strongly advise you start packing. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The room felt smaller now. Colder. Ray's lip curled. This is a setup. You tricked us. Maya's gaze snapped to him. No, Officer Jenkins. I gave you a chance to be decent, to be human. You failed. Travis stepped forward. We didn't even know who you were. That's not fair. That's the point, Maya replied, locking eyes with him. You didn't need to know. You should treat everyone with respect, not just the ones you fear. Her words hung like smoke. Someone clapped. It was Officer Beckett, young, nervous, but standing tall. Others followed, slowly, until half the room was applauding. The other half stared, silent, their guilt thick in the air. After the meeting, Maya retreated to the warden's office, her new domain. She closed the door and exhaled deeply. The adrenaline hadn't faded. But there was no time for relief. Calvin Shaw entered minutes later, dropping a stack of files on her desk. Whistleblower reports, he said. 37 complaints. All sealed until now. Maya opened the top file. Names. Incidents. Photos. Her heart sank. God, she whispered. They buried all this. For years. She flipped to the next page. Officer Jenkins' name appeared, linked to 3 separate harassment cases, one of which had been resolved internally. Travis Holt was tied to excessive force complaints, falsified logs, and even a missing inmate report that was never investigated. Maya's eyes narrowed. These men will not just be disciplined, she said. They'll be prosecuted. Calvin nodded. We're with you. The next few days were a whirlwind. Officers were suspended. Body cam footage was seized. Inmates were interviewed privately. Several staff members resigned before they could even be questioned. Maya worked from sunrise to midnight, refusing shortcuts. She held face-to-face meetings with every department, implementing reform protocols. The kitchen staff got safer conditions. The female inmates were moved into protected housing. Security systems were upgraded. Outside, the media began circling, hungry for details. But Maya was in control now, and she wasn't done. By Friday morning, she called Ray and Travis into her office, separately. Ray arrived first, smugly pretending calm. You wanted to see me? He asked. Maya gestured to the chair. Sit. He did. She handed him a printed copy of his suspension order. What the hell is this? Your record is riddled with misconduct, she said. You've endangered inmates, falsified reports, and harassed civilians. Effective immediately, you're on unpaid leave pending further investigation. Ray laughed bitterly. You think I'm just gonna roll over for this? I've got connections. Friends in high places. So do I, Maya replied. The difference is, mine don't cover for abuse. She pressed a button on the intercom. Escort Officer Jenkins out of the building. 2 guards appeared at the door. Ray stood, fuming, but said nothing as he was led away. Travis was next. He looked more shaken, less cocky, more aware. I know I messed up, he stammered. But I was just following. No, Maya interrupted. You weren't following orders. You were following instincts. And those instincts are rotten. She handed him his own suspension. His hands trembled as he took it. You can either cooperate and take a plea, or we go public with everything, Maya said. Your call. Travis didn't argue. He left quietly. Maya watched him go through the blinds, a strange sense of stillness washing over her. Not satisfaction, because there was nothing satisfying about cleaning up a disaster. But there was relief. The system was far from healed. But today, it was bleeding less. And for the first time in a long while, Maya felt that maybe, just maybe, justice wasn't a dream. It was a decision. And she had made it. A week later, the story broke. Undercover DA exposes prison corruption, screamed the headline on every news channel and blog. Social media was ablaze with footage of Maya Monroe walking confidently through the prison gates. Overnight, she became a national symbol of accountability and courage. Civil rights groups praised her. Law students studied her. And politicians scrambled to pretend they had always supported her mission. But not everyone was celebrating. Deep in the shadows of county politics, a meeting was taking place, one that Maya didn't know about. Councilman Everett Langston, an aging but still influential figure with ties to the prison's former contractors, slammed his whiskey glass on the table. She's destroying everything, he barked. All our contracts, our leverage, our control. One woman. And now we're on the front page like villains. Across from him sat Warden Kravitz, pale and quiet, the very picture of a man who'd gone hunting and come back to a war zone. She moved fast, he muttered. I didn't see it coming. Damn right you didn't, Everett hissed. I should have known she wasn't just some social worker. There was a pause. Then Everett leaned in, lowering his voice. We still have friends in that system. One of the contractors, he's got dirt. Real dirt. Her father, years ago. He wasn't the saint she pretends he was. The warden blinked. What kind of dirt? Everett's eyes gleamed. Enough to make headlines of our own. Back at the jail, Maya was reviewing progress reports when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. This is Director Monroe. The voice on the other end was gravelly, smug. You've made some enemies, Monroe. Dig too deep, and they'll dig back. Maya froze. Who is this? The line went dead. She stared at the phone. Then her office door opened. Calvin stepped in, holding a thick file. We've got a problem. What now? She asked, standing. He placed the file on her desk. This just came in through unofficial channels. Someone leaked sealed court documents from 1994. It's about your father. Maya's breath caught. She opened the file, and the world shifted under her feet. Inside were transcripts, testimonies, whispers of a deal her father had made decades ago as a young public defender. A deal that had resulted in a wrongful conviction of a black man who had since died in prison. Her hands trembled. No, she whispered. This can't be right. It might not be, Calvin said gently. But the media won't care. Maya closed the folder slowly. The truth she had fought so hard to uphold was now being weaponized against her. Not because it was fair, but because it was convenient. The twist wasn't just that she had exposed the system. It was that now, the system was coming for her. Maya sat alone in her apartment, the leaked documents spread out like scars across her dining table. The file wasn't just an attack. It was a mirror, cracked, ugly, and real. Her father had always been her guiding light, the man whose integrity had shaped her path. And now, it appeared that light might have cast shadows of its own. But there was more to it. The case in question was from 1994, a time when the system was even more brutal to young black public defenders. Maya read the transcripts again. Her father hadn't fabricated evidence, but he had accepted a plea deal that favored the prosecution. The man convicted had protested his innocence to the end. Did he believe the man was guilty? Maya asked herself out loud. Or was he backed into a corner? A folder of old photos caught her eye. One showed her, barely 5, sitting on her father's lap outside the courthouse. He was tired, worn, but smiling, always smiling for her. She picked up her phone and dialed Calvin. "I need you to do something," she said. "Pull every case my father ever worked. Every plea, every trial. I need to know who he really was." There was a pause. "You're going to make this public, aren't you?" Calvin said quietly. "I have to. Maya, if you do this, the media will eat it alive. Your reputation, your work, your father's legacy. It'll all be dragged through the mud. We'll lose momentum." "I know," she said. "But if I hide it, I become the very thing I promised to dismantle." The next day, Maya stood at a podium during a press conference. The air was thick with tension. Reporters clutched their microphones like weapons. Cameras blinked like unblinking eyes. She took a breath. "There's something you need to know," she began. "Not just about the jail or my leadership, but about my father. About me." She laid it out, piece by piece. The 1994 case. The plea deal. The man who died. The questions that still haunted her. "I can't change what happened before I ever became Director Monroe," she said, voice trembling but strong. "But I can make sure that legacy, however complicated, is faced with transparency. If I ask this system to be honest, I must be honest first." The room went silent. Then came the storm. Headlines broke within the hour. Some called her brave. Others called her reckless. Talking heads debated her motives. But something else happened too, something Maya didn't expect. Former inmates, lawyers, even activists who had once doubted her, stood up for her. "This," one viral tweet read, "is what real leadership looks like. Vulnerability, truth, accountability." Yet despite the support, there was fallout. The mayor's office called. "We're being pressured to review your appointment," the aide said, voice neutral. Maya nodded. "Let them. I'm not here to cling to power. I'm here to change the game." Later that night, as she sat in her office, Calvin entered again. He had the look of someone who didn't bring good news. "They've scheduled a hearing," he said, "to review your position. Could go either way." Maya stared out the window. She had two choices. Fight the hearing head-on, defend her name and risk dragging the system into more chaos. Or resign on her own terms, preserving the dignity of her mission, but surrendering her power to enact more change. Both paths were steeped in sacrifice. If she fought, she risked being seen as clinging to authority, no better than those she once exposed. If she walked away, she risked letting the system go back to its old ways. She looked at the photo of her father again. Then she looked in the mirror. "I became director not to wear the crown," she whispered, "but to break the cage." She picked up her pen and began to write. The hearing was set for Friday. For 4 days, the city buzzed like a hornet's nest, swarming with outrage, debate, and speculation. News vans parked outside Maya's building. Opinion pieces blasted across screens. Pundits argued. Was Director Monroe a fraud or a fearless reformer? Inside the Central Justice Building, Maya prepared for the storm. The hearing chamber had been repurposed for this event. Rows of public seats were filled with reporters, law professors, concerned citizens, and a few protesters. A small panel, composed of state officials, city representatives, and a legal ethics advisor, sat elevated like judges in a trial. Each wore a face carved in stone. Calvin stood by her side, silent, his jaw clenched. "You don't have to do this alone," he said as the room filled. "I never was alone," Maya replied. As she took her seat at the witness table, the murmurs hushed. A gavel struck. "We are here today to determine whether Director Maya Monroe should remain in her current position given the revelations regarding her late father's controversial 1994 case and the possible ethical implications attached to her response," the chairwoman began. Maya's heartbeat pounded like thunder, but her face stoic. "You may begin your statement." She stood. The microphone caught her breath, steady and even. "I am not here to defend mistakes. I am here to face them." Click. Cameras flashed. She continued. "My father, a man I revered, took a plea deal in a case that may have sentenced an innocent man. The evidence is complicated. The system was more so. I found the file only recently. I could have buried it. I didn't." She looked at each panel member in the eyes. "I knew the risk, but I also knew that real change doesn't come from silence. It comes from confronting the ugly parts of our history, even when those parts are family." A low murmur rippled through the room. The chairwoman raised an eyebrow. "Director Monroe, some would say you used this to garner sympathy, to shield yourself from criticism during a critical moment. How do you respond?" I'd rather be hated for telling the truth than celebrated for hiding it. Another panelist chimed in. And yet your reforms in the precinct have angered unions, sparked lawsuits, and challenged traditions. Do you believe your presence still fosters stability? Maya smiled faintly. I didn't come here to preserve stability. I came to build justice. The room inhaled. And what about your staff? Those officers who mocked you behind bars? The viral video that started all of this? What does that say about your leadership? Maya leaned forward. It says the culture was rotten. And I was the disinfectant. Of course there was resistance. You don't clean mold without stirring a stench. The audience shifted. Some were smiling now. Some were stunned. Then came the surprise. A witness was called. Ms. Felicia Carter, the chairwoman announced. Former inmate, released under Director Monroe's new early evaluation protocol. A woman in her 40s walked in, dreadlocks wrapped in a headscarf, eyes full of emotion. She took the stand. I was serving a 10-year sentence for a crime my ex committed. Didn't matter. I took the fall. First time anyone reviewed my case again was when this woman, she pointed at Maya, signed off on a review system that saw me as a human, not a file. Tears gathered in her eyes. She gave me my life back. Another witness. A former correctional officer, one of the few who didn't join the mockery brigade. I watched Director Monroe walk into this department knowing full well she wasn't welcome, he said. And I watched her change things that were decades overdue. If she's guilty of anything, it's giving a damn. The testimonies came one after another. A mother of a teen who'd been wrongly arrested. A former gang member, now working in restorative justice. A guard who admitted he'd left the job because the new standards were too righteous for me. But the final witness stopped everything. Call Sergeant James Trent. The room froze. The white officer from the viral video. He walked in slowly, clean-shaven, uniform pressed, eyes heavy. Everyone stared, including Maya. He stood before the panel. I was one of the officers who mocked Director Monroe during her arrest. I said things I won't repeat. Because I didn't see her. I saw a threat. To my control. To my comfort. To my ignorance. He turned to Maya. And I was wrong. Silence. He looked back to the panel. She didn't fire me. She made me take accountability classes, retraining, community forums. And I resisted. Until one day, I walked into a workshop and sat face-to-face with a young man I'd arrested 3 years ago. He remembered everything. I remembered none of it. He swallowed. That day changed me. She changed me. He paused. I still disagree with some of her policies. But I'll say this, you want real change? You keep her. A storm of whispers filled the room. The chairwoman struck the gavel again. Thank you. We'll recess for deliberation. Maya stepped outside the courtroom into the blinding sun. The city felt different now. Calvin joined her. They'll vote within the hour. How do you think it'll go? She asked, exhausted. Calvin grinned. If they have sense, you'll stay. Maya shook her head. It doesn't matter anymore. What? She turned to him. Because I know now. This movement, this momentum, it's bigger than me. Bigger than a title. The doors opened. A clerk rushed out. They're ready. Back in the chamber, the panel took their seats. The chairwoman's voice rang out. After careful deliberation, it is the decision of this board. Pause. 1,000 heartbeats waited. That Director Maya Monroe shall remain in her current position and continue her duties as head of internal reform and oversight for the Metro Justice Department. Applause erupted. Maya sat still for a moment, like a soldier waiting for a second explosion. Then she stood, not to thank them, but to face the people. To those who doubted me, she said, thank you for keeping me sharp. To those who supported me, thank you for carrying me through. And to the system that tried to break me, know this, I'm just getting started. That night, Maya stood on the roof of her building. The stars glinted above. A breeze danced around her. In her hand, the old file from 1994. She lit a match, but didn't set it ablaze. Instead, she opened it one last time. We'll find the truth, she whispered. Then she closed it, placed it on her shelf, and turned toward tomorrow. A week had passed since the verdict, but the city was still humming with the aftershocks of truth. Maya sat quietly in her new office, less sterile than the last. Photos of community meetings, letters from parolees, and her mother's framed quote lined the walls. Justice isn't a building. It's a breath, a fire, a seed. It was a Sunday morning. Most of the city was still asleep. But Maya was up early, reviewing a letter she'd received from the Innocence Project. They'd begun reinvestigating the 1994 case. The file she had discovered, her father's compromise, his secret pain, was now public. Not to shame him, but to liberate the man it may have wronged. Elijah Barrett. His name had become a chant at marches, a symbol on shirts, a discussion in classrooms. But he was still behind bars, waiting. Maya had requested a full audit of his trial. And while it would take months, perhaps longer, it had begun. That mattered. She looked out the window as the city skyline stretched into dawn. Her phone buzzed. It was Calvin. Calvin, breakfast? Same spot. She smiled. Maya, give me 20. She grabbed her coat and headed for the diner 2 blocks away, the same one they'd gone to the morning after her appointment as director. This time, there were no whispers, no stares. The waitress even greeted her with, "We're proud of you." Calvin was already at their booth, sipping coffee. "You look like you've slept in a decade," he said. "Maybe half," she joked. They talked over eggs and toast, about the DA's new policies, about a youth program being piloted in Easttown, about the officers who had started requesting implicit bias training voluntarily. Small things. Quiet victories. "Think you'll stay long in this role?" Calvin asked. Maya didn't answer immediately. "I don't know. I didn't come here to sit. I came to move things." He nodded. "Then move them." She sipped her coffee. "There's something else I've been thinking about." He raised an eyebrow. "A fellowship. To train women of color in leadership roles within justice systems. Not just lawyers, but wardens, case managers, prison psychologists. We need more hands in the system that understand what it's like to be crushed by it. Call it the Monroe Initiative," Calvin said. She shook her head. "Call it the Barrett Foundation. If he's proven innocent, that name deserves to live in power, not in silence." Later that evening, Maya visited her mother's grave. She hadn't come in months. Not since her appointment. Not since the scandal. The grave was simple. A small stone, weathered by time. The same quote etched beneath her name. Maya knelt and brushed away leaves. "I did it, Mama. And I didn't become them. Even when I wanted to. Even when it would have been easier." A breeze lifted her hair. "I still don't know what to do with Dad's legacy. Some days I miss him. Some days I don't. But I understand him now. The fear. The compromises. And I won't repeat them." She stood in silence. Then whispered, "You were right. Justice breathes." She turned to go but paused, looked back at the grave, and added, "And now it breathes through me." That night, Maya hosted a forum at the precinct. Not in the courtroom, not on the internet, but right there where the viral video had happened. The room was packed. Citizens, officers, clergy, youth leaders, ex-inmates, some still skeptical, some already transformed. She didn't speak from a podium. She stood among them. "We are not here tonight to clean up reputations," she said. "We are here to clean house and rebuild it." A young man in the back raised his hand. "How do we know this isn't just talk?" Maya smiled. "Because I've bled for this talk. And I'm still standing." He nodded. One woman stepped forward. "I want to help. My son was killed by police 5 years ago. I want to be part of whatever change you're making." Another followed. "I used to run with a crew. I've been clean 2 years. I teach art now. Can I lead a workshop inside the youth facility?" Maya's voice broke slightly. "Yes. Yes, you can." It wasn't an institution anymore. It was a movement. The night closed with music. A violinist played a melody that floated up through the rafters like prayer. As Maya looked around the room, she saw it clearly. Not justice as punishment, but justice as restoration. Not as vengeance, but as vision. A month later, Maya received a call from the parole board. They had reopened Elijah Barrett's case. New DNA evidence had surfaced. It contradicted the original testimony. He had a real chance. She stared at the phone long after the call ended. Then she called Calvin. "We're going to see him," she said. He didn't ask who. "I'll drive," he replied. And they did. To a prison in the state's northern hills, where a man had waited decades in a cage he might never have belonged in. When Maya walked into the visitation room, she expected nerves, guilt, fear. But what she saw instead was a man standing tall, weathered, yet clear-eyed. "Elijah Barrett?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "You must be the director." "She Saturday, yes. And I'm sorry it took this long." He nodded. "But you came." And that was the beginning of another story. One not yet finished, but finally told.